Okay, I had this idea. It's like we go like, and then someone's like, "Hello."
DJ Sorrow. Turn the fuck up.
There's nothing funny about Halloween.
Oh yeah,
This
yeah, yeah,
sarcastic festival reflects rather an infernal
yeah,
demand for revenge by children on the adult world. I think that's a pretty fun quote. And maybe that
yeah.
helps start off a little quick the first of this three tripartite episode. 19A. Mischief. How does Halloween represent this sort of like purge like moment of pseudo anarchism? And yeah, what were you thinking around this realm, Carson?
Yeah. I was thinking, uh, I like the mischief in the kids revolting um part, because I feel like when I think back to Halloween, when like I feel like there's multiple phases of Halloween. If it's like you go around dressed up and you trick or treat, and then there's like a phase that starts after that or whatever. I don't know, when you're 12, 13 or something. That people just go out and just kind of, you know, cause trouble. And yeah, like some of my friends and I started doing this thing where like we went from like the regular neighborhood that we would go, like sometimes with my family or my brothers or whatever, that we would trick or treat in. But then we started like driving, and everybody would go kind of this uh, like a housing complex or whatever, like a nice neighborhood. And it was interesting because it was basically like this self-contained thing where there were most of the time there were cops around. Um, a lot of times there would be like parents kind of around too, but like it was a mixed like people trick or treating, little kids trick or treating and whatever. But then you'd also just have like, I don't know, people going around like throwing eggs, water balloons, shaving cream, like toilet papering people's houses. People people like putting dog poop in bags and lighting it on fire, fireworks, stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, it was thrilling. It was kind of just like, I don't even know what's going on. And maybe you could say it's like kind of some sort of predecessor to like being at like a protest maybe or something, just without some sort of like guiding ethic or principle, or I don't know. But yeah, so it was just like a weird experiment to do that one night a year. And it was almost like, like they would let it happen a bit, like almost like let this whatever you want to call it, excess energy, whatever, let it like fizzle, leak out a bit. Um, but people definitely like, I don't know, got arrested sometimes, or um, people like got in fights, and yeah. But I don't know. I liked like the kind of, well, yeah. I liked the atmosphere was fun, um, and I don't know. It didn't seem like most people were out to like hurt each other. Maybe it was mostly just a classic disrespect for property. It was like, oh, you're gonna like break people's windows if you like egg their house or something. Um, but yeah, either you have any experiences like that?
Well, I think like maybe one way to tie this in with like a historical thing is, uh, I was talking about how Halloween has origins in the Celtic tradition of Samhain, which then is syncretized into neo paganism and Wicca, but also into what is now Halloween. Um, and in the Samhain, part of the idea was to like ward off evil spirits, because like Halloween was a time when the ancestor with the dead people would like come back to their homes and check in on stuff. But along with them, all these evil spirits would also come around. So you did mischief and made like demonic turnips to light up and stuff as a way to ward off the bad spirits and to kind of appease the nature spirits that are tricky in nature, like whether they're brownies or goblins or what have you, fairies. Um, and I'm also thinking about this figure of the changeling, which is when someone is like seen as neurotypical. They were thought to be like switched by the Fae at birth, and it was actually some kind of gremlin and not a human. But alongside that, I think there was kind of even like in Victorian times, there was kind of a reaction against the figure of the child is kind of. I had this professor in college, Professor Nettie, who made this sort of post-colonial analysis that the way that like the Victorian culture like polices the child is related to the way in which they police the like Indian subject in on a larger scale. It's seen as like a backwards culture that is less developed and needs to be disciplined into the form of what of the colonizer. And so like this idea of like the child as a anarchic and unruly force that needs to be civilized is interesting. But then when we bring it to an American context, there's definitely like more to it. There's the unevenness of like who's allowed to be rambunctious is certainly, I think, maybe brought to a head in instances like The Purge. I think they even play out racial tensions in the series The Purge, but also like where like in some places you like the violence, you're more exposed to actual violence or whatever in times of anarchy, or in times of like rambunctiousness. I don't know. I'm also thinking about the series Gremlins and just how much like those little goblin like furry creatures are fun to play with. They're fun to um, kind of follow along with because and we like I like this little figure of like the hobgoblin, the gremlin, the childlike creature that could also be seen as like uncivilized or whatever, like a savage or something. But
Mm-hmm.
this sort of little there's like this caricature of that is emblemized by like the gremlin. I feel like someone is like going and like wrecking everything, and that's an energy
Yeah.
that you kind of want to get behind.
Yeah. It's okay. There's a few interesting things there. I think the Victorian thing about kids is like an interesting angle because you think about like all I don't know. It's a very British like trope, I guess, of like Charles Dickens, Roald Dahl, Harry Potter, like what's that? The series? What was it of unfortunate events? Like, yeah, all these are all very like you know, children are kind of like more or less angel slash mischievous evil doer whatever, but like yeah, they're all intensely policed in like a really cruel way. Like I think the cruelty is something maybe we could also get into because I'm also thinking back like yeah, there was for sure an element of like cruelty in the spectacle of like humiliation and like I don't know, subjecting people to like kind of fucked up stuff. Like
Yeah, there's a lot there. Because I think in some ways when we're talking about like the cruelty towards children, sometimes I think Halloween is like their catharsis day, where you can be a little bit of a goblin, like you're supposed to allow your monstrousness to come out at this like one sort of like socially sanctioned moment. I don't really know too much about how the Victorians sort of engaged with Halloween specifically, but some of the things that you were mentioning reminded me of like Henry James' Turn of the Screw, and this weird sense that the children in that story are talking about a ghost that no one else has really seen, and like it transcending like the reason of adults where like ghosts aren't real, but then there's always this like suspicion that something is happening, right? So like the idea that I'm trying to get to is maybe the sense of like curtailing children, like punishing them, trying to get them to be more orderly, is to maybe train their baser instincts, but there's a reversal that always happens where children are able to access and remind adults of their sort of more, I guess, inherent fears, their suspicions, their curiosities that society maybe encourages them not to be, to indulge in. And also, let me rephrase this. So, in the story of the Turn of the Screw, the concept of the ghost is witnessed by the adults. I don't remember the adults, but it's driven primarily by the kids who are saying they see this ghost, and it's related to this person that I think died in the house. It might have been their mother, and there's a new wife that's come along to try to take care of the children. But the point being is that the fear is often driven by a narrative that is not often. The fear in that book, as I recall it, is driven by the narrative sown by the children, and that almost tearing away at the fabric, right, of polite society. They're in this gaudy Victorian house. The going back to the sense that like, okay, we need to control this, like, also I think is the underlying fear of the state being like, we can't succumb to these things that we claim to have overcome, right? So I don't know if that maybe those tidbits tie into what you all are saying, or takes too
Yeah.
far of a left turn.
Well, I just wanted to also touch, yeah, that I think the like the imperial, like reflecting back on itself thing. I think that's like Edward Said is, yeah, like that's a, in like Victorian times as well, that it's like, oh, imperial practices, and it extends to now, of course, imperial or colonial practices mostly to do with policing populations, are then the same technologies are brought back on the whatever empire population, and then the same things are exercised on people, and then, but yeah, it's a whole weird relationship.
The maybe gratuitous violence sort of expressed against the colonial subject, right, is not seen as mischief, right, or misdoing, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
all of the customs and developed society that is sort of indigenous to wherever the colonial exploit is going, or where the British Empire is trying to spread, is trying to frame this as this is infantile, this is backward, wayward, and we need to like be bad actors in order to bring you to the light, in similar crusade like ways, where we're going to beat you, which is like I'm thinking of like the Catholic schools, like the ruler smacking the hand, the sort of like, we will punish you for your errant ways,
Right, right.
and act almost like animals ourselves in order to show you that you should be to equally disdainful of your practices. You should shun these things because they're under the threat of
Yeah,
violence. You
right. There's
you
always the
should
threat of that.
assimilate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always the threat of like punishment of a certain punishment, like a certitude, and yeah, the self-policing person, you know. I actually, well, this is just bringing up something that I feel like we should, yeah, like maybe something that's pretty specifically also. I don't know if it's just American, but like people do for sure. It's a huge part of Halloween and the fall time of like people enjoy dressing up in ways that are just like, you know, offensive.
Causing a different type of mischief.
And it's like yeah, like, and I feel like this ties into maybe what like Jackie's talking about, like maybe this is like a hollowing out of like some sort of traditional connection to like mischief and having it be, I don't know, syncretized or replaced by like a like colonial fantasy thing of, I don't know, just dressing in ways to mock people and that are cruel and stuff, but
Well, I feel like at this point we like even that form of mischief has been hollowed out too. Like we're not
yeah,
that's
yeah.
been policed out of people as well. So like at this
Yeah,
point,
you're right.
but I mean like for a while, here's the thing. Like I think that just to put some pins in a couple points when it comes to like colonialism and stuff. Like um, I think that there's this idea that I mean the colonial project in India, the British colonialism in India, I think for the most part was an attempt to subdue the animal within oneself and subdue any form of mischief that one encounters. And it is a vampiric thing, you know, because like everyone is possessed by the same spirit of like discipline and that is supposed to be like polite society or whatever, like proper life, and like the animals cast out continuously. And of course, the animal is seen in the figure of the colonized subject as part of the way to justify the violent extraction, which is the real, you know, purpose in many ways. So like it's trying to cast out the animal, but I feel like it's interesting because so part of you might want to be like, okay, let's reclaim the animal within all of us, and by extension maybe the mischief. Although mischief and animality often are like you see mischief in the wilderness, but a lot of people see mischief as something that is not caused by animals. As like, can animals be mischievous? I mean, they certainly can, like a raccoon, a squirrel, but
Oh, the
like,
fox.
yeah, but but then I guess that the point would just be that like I think that also like the way that people the difference between like pranks and like I think that it seems to me, I don't know, like I think it depends on the place, but depending on where you are and when you are in time in America, if you egg a house in one context, it is all fun and games and it is a prank, and in another context you might be shot, you know. So
Yeah.
I think that the unequal distribution of the right to cause mischief, which isn't a right, but is still something that a lot of people have the ability to do and perform these rights. A lot of other people don't. Um, but then you know, yeah, I guess it's an unequal, like it's different than the British moment where everyone's trying to find discipline, because I think that in America a lot of like of the line between who's colonized and who's colonizer at this point is pretty blurry, but like I think across the board everyone wants to be able to be mischievous and rambunctious on their own terms and wants to police everybody else's forms of mischief when it causes them inconvenience.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to Carson's story regarding mischief, like there is this sort of like thread of now that the social barriers are thinner, right? Like using this sort of like thinning of the spirit world and the material world as well. Like people from other neighborhoods are sort of welcomed into neighborhoods that they wouldn't usually be welcomed in. Now,
Yeah.
there are some changes, but I'll get into those later. But causing mischief outside of one's home it like is, or like home neighborhood is sort of like a almost like pushing the barriers of the class tensions that you feel on like throughout the yearly basis, right? Like I'm not going to TP my neighbors' houses, but I'm going to TP like the Johnsons who are like down in the other neighborhood where all the, you know, king size candy bars are, where the kid that always has the new sneakers comes from, and like, and you know, and there's almost a way that like you know that that place is heavily policed, but you also have the cover of wearing a mask. You also have the cover of like I'm a trick or treat. Like there are ways to like blend in and bleed into this sort of like like the mischief is like happening. It is a thing that we've already
That's
established,
true.
but
And there's also there is the spirit of it too, because like if everyone's wearing a mask, and it gives some people liberty to do those things if everyone's wearing a mask,
exactly.
and also it also, like you said, like you're kind of pointing to, like if everyone's doing it, it kind of reveals ironically the power of the people in these like moments, like yeah, like
Right.
what are the cops
Yeah.
gonna do, like
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe just to touch on what something you just said of like that there was an element of these people deserve this because nobody was going out into the the dark more rural parts or whatever the like because it's what are you gonna do out there? It's kind of scary already. It's more that it's almost like this I don't know, it's like a whatever the constructed cookie cutterness of the neighborhood and the niceness of it all like invited that like kind of that it's all for fun, like this isn't actually consequential, like
Right.
yeah.
And I even think like even the offering of the king size candy bars, right? Like this, it's almost like a peace offering. Like if I give you something that you desire, please don't fuck up my house or some shit like that, right? But also,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, like yeah,
yeah, nice
they're
trade.
yeah, truly nice try. Go ahead.
I think that as a potential capstone, it's all treat these days, and there's no tricks. I feel like there's a lot fewer tricks, and it's just
Yeah,
trick or treat, but we all know it's just treats. But we don't have as many tricks, I don't think. I think we've been seeing less tricks on
Yeah,
Halloween.
it's just people dressing up like TV characters.
Exactly.
yeah.
There's
I mean,
nobody's putting razor blades in the candy apples
Putting
anymore.
LSD in the
I
Actually,
will
maybe.
say though that I
candy
think
corn.
that Halloween in major cities and maybe the night before is also kind of where kids do sort of petty crimes like theft and things like that, because it's kind of like, oh, like I'm in a disguise anyway. I say this because one of my friends got mugged like last week or something like that, and the person who robbed them was clearly just like a teenager, right? Like causing a pretty big ruckus, right? Like it was a pretty rough experience for them because like a gun was involved, right? But there is this sense that like the trick is the platform, at least for me, right? Like the mischief is kind of like the basis, and your ability to swim through it kind of depends on where you're at and how far you can get away from places where mischief would be more the norm, right? But when you say trick, are you talking about something a little bit more whimsical, something that's like there's less fear stuff?
Just maybe that some people are born into the mischief. I guess is maybe if we're saying that mischief. It's cool to think about like mischief being like a traditional like connection to like a spirited world, or like or some sort of outlet that could like you could access something beyond the plane of just like this existence through mischief. But there's also now like this maybe a modern mischief that's defined very much in relation to the empire and the police state and stuff. So it's some people are just born into the mischief already, and there isn't really any getting out of it. You're always, so I know that it's definitely like a striated experience that isn't accessible to everybody, but like there is maybe something interesting about like letting it, like, I don't know, like the kind of bacchanal type
But in times
celebration.
like Halloween, things get topsy-turvy, I think. And Mischief is the way that things get topsy-turvy. And, yeah. People... Yeah. What is seen as mischief and what is seen as sinister, yeah, it's definitely striated.
Well, what next, fellas? Oh. Okay.